This time Martin Odegaard. Zinchenko from Ketchiatin, it's 4. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.
Hello and welcome to not another Arsenal podcast, aka the Carl Jenkinson of Arsenal podcast. My name is Mike Hers, your host, and today I am very congested, so I want to apologize for that first and foremost. We are going to do a little bit of a season review, a little bit of a takeaway at the beginning, a brief grading of the players. Let's see how long that takes. Some moments of the season, moment you would change of the season, and player of the season. Player of the season might be difficult because I feel like we're going to collide because there's like maybe two players that we're going to all fight for. So I'll let my two co-hosts go first so they could get in the good players, and then I'll toss in a random one. I'm sure I could think of something. We will not be focused, hopefully, as Kelly drinks too much on transfers tonight. I asked my co-host to behave and hold their disappointment in KSE for the night. So we're going to mainly focus on the disappointment of the season, not the disappointment of the transfer season. So that's what we're going with for tonight. Boys and girls, strap up. First and foremost, as always, the introductions. Chris, welcome back, sir.
Hello. And spoiler alert, Tomiyasu is my man of the season. Just kidding. I know, right? Who? I'm good, guys. It's been a while. I was on vacation last week, and then the week before, somehow I missed it. Can't remember why, but it's good to be back and
discuss with us generally.
Well, I was accused of skipping out on it to watch the NBA, and I've never been more offended in my life, Mike. Because if you know me at all, I used to be an avid NBA watcher, and it's unwatchable for me. At this point, I watch highlights, and that's about it. So I would never skip out on you guys if I didn't have a really good reason. So I'm here, and we're here to talk about a season that we'd all rather forget. So I'm sure this is going to be a great pod.
great content recipe.
Talk about it.
What an odd season, to say the very least. I've been looking at the questions that we have on the list, guys, and I'm like wrapping my head like, how am I going to answer this? Because like there's so much shenanigans that took place this season that I find it hard to be hard on a specific player or be hard on the team, which might be unpopular, or I might be safe because BX Schooner's not in the chat tonight. So I might be safe tonight to voice my concern with our bad luck, if you will. Kelly, how's everything going, my friend?
Good. It's been very, very busy with work, which has been a nice real life distraction from how terrible my football team is. Yeah, things have been good. Again, I'm not going to say the T word here, which has been making me very, very mad and distracting me from making money. But hey, you know, it's nice to look back, and if nothing else, this season is in fact PX. This season is in fact done. So if nothing else, at least we're looking back, and I guess we can look forward, but we really can't. We're just in it. The idea that we're not in this like 365-day a year chart, and that is Arsenal all day, every day, and even more on the weekends, is something that we can't really escape. But it's all right. BX just kicks in the door and goes, "Nope, not so fast, my friend."
Say his name twice and he will appear. That's I tempted fate, and here we are. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, I forgot. Kelly's getting all the wrestling references now. Wasn't like I said, it wasn't on my 2025 bingo card, but Kelly got into pro wrestling, which is just mind blowing to me.
I don't just get into stuff. I'm somebody who doesn't have a ton of hobbies, but when I do them, I don't dabble. And so I found myself last night running on the treadmill and watching the NXT pay-per-view in full. And so I sent some like random text about the women's match and that, and I could see like Mike just processing what the hell I was talking about. It's like, what? It's not just like, we don't just watch football. We watch the Argentinian second division too. We don't just watch wrestling. We watch the women's NXT events live from Miami. That's what we do.
Kelly decided that he was done watching the Premier League because it felt like a fake competition, and he decided to watch something that felt more real. So he got into WWE wrestling,
where the outcome is not determined.
Exactly.
At least I'll say this: at least they're transparent that it's scripted. There you go. Instead of blowing smoke up our rear end, pretending like it's not scripted, like they don't have like their own personal agenda to make shit happen. So, at the very least, that's what the WWE has on English Premier League. And as you guys know, I've been calling it EPL WWE for quite some time now at the rate that we're going. So
for a half decade at least, Mikey, I can.
at the very least, yes. So it'd be interesting, man. We're gonna try to pick this season apart. Like I said, we're gonna start off with maybe just like an overview, a overview site of the entire season as a whole. How can you one of these days I'm gonna be able to say that word. Help me out, Chris.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah, I'm gonna review that one. I'm gonna loop you guys saying it, and hopefully I'm going to learn it. Is what I'm gonna do. See if you guys could digest how the cards came our way, the injuries affected our squad, ultimately still finishing second in the league, which is some to some good, to some bad. Managed to make the semifinal of the Champions League. We were, and look, I'm going to get really nitty gritty here to say we are one of the only teams within the entire season that dominated the team that ended up being Champions League winner.
Mm-hmm.
Holding on and grasping for straws over here, boys. So I'm just going to there. So Chris, you have the floor, sir. Talk to me overall. If you want to put like a 1 through 5 or however the hell you want to grade this, feel free, and then Kelly and I will follow suit, Chris.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my reflections on the season. What a strange season. I can't remember a season watching Arsenal where there wasn't more stuff happening almost like from a narrative perspective off the pitch or on the pitch, but not the football, as there was this season. As you said, Mike, we had, feeling like record injury issues, and they weren't just, they didn't feel random. They felt like they were clustered in various pockets within our squad. We had massive injuries to our striker core. Where we had to play a central midfielder. We had massive injuries to our right pod, Ben White, Odegaard, and Saka, which kind of made our offense tick last season, where we scored a ton of goals and almost won the league. We had the refereeing stuff. I feel like for me, all that stuff we've talked about so much that I feel like that's sort of fades in the background. And I think for me, what I am left with is two thoughts. One is simultaneously, I think how Arteta was able to get as much as he could from the squad he had available to him. I think we overachieved from the standpoint that when you look at who we had playing towards the end of the year and the kinds of wins we amassed and the fact that we hung on to second, I think, again, applying context, that we actually overachieved with that squad that we had available. You look at the Champions League semifinal against PSG, most of the guys on the bench were academy kids that have barely played a minute or have never played a minute for Arsenal. So you think, with it cobbled together, the fact that we got to the semis is somewhat remarkable. And at the same time, the fact that we shot ourselves in the foot in January, and that was totally and utterly within our control to avoid, that we could have done business. We could have pushed business up from the summer into January to ensure that we weren't left threadbare, that we weren't left with a squad that was hanging on by a thread, where we were talking about toward the end of the year. It's possible that we could drop out of the top 5. And it was possible at one point. It wasn't likely, but it was possible. And I think when you're
it took a pretty gutsy win against a pretty good Newcastle team. I think, of course, I'm just cutting across because we're both drinking, but like, it's going to be forgotten to the sands of time how we kind of gutted out a win that was kind of a flat-footed draw type of win, and that's the only reason that last day we were not sweating it out with all the rest of them.
Yep,
just that win. That it was a huge win
against a team that has had our number. Yeah.
So like, and was Isak was injured, right, for that match too.
Mm-hmm.
Without that Isak injury, that's maybe not the walk that it was to get into comfortably finish second, because that was a lot of mess on the last day.
Yep.
I've
Sorry.
been
Yeah, and I think
constantly told that injuries have no impact whatsoever
That's
on
true.
the game. So
Very
I'm,
true.
I'm not sure if Isaac missed really had an impact on the game there, Kelly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's a
injuries
good
don't
point.
have an impact. There was nobody in January that could help us. I mean, there are
Mhm.
plenty of mantras we could repeat from this past season
Mhm.
that we've totally and obviously found to be 100% true all of the time. I say tongue firmly implanted in cheek. So yeah, I'm left with like feeling in some weird way like proud that like this squad assembled in the way that it did with all the challenges that it experienced that were out of their control, that they were able to hold on and finish second, which is not a trophy. We shouldn't feel proud about a second place finish again. um but I think they face a lot of challenges that were not that the squad did not create on their own, that they were handed, and that they dealt with through that adversity. And I think, you know, the players themselves should be commended for that. And at the same time, I feel an increasing amount of angst, and I think we may get into this in this pod. We probably will, because it's that dominates, I think, our back channel. My increasing amount of angst and a spotlight being pointed back at the top of the food chain, and that is KSC and the people that they have appointed to manage the club day to day, which is their lawyer group.
Mhm.
And again, we are managed by lawyers at the very top. We are who are, I think, incredibly risk averse. We talked about this a lot.
Mhm.
And I think we saw that play out in the January transfer window, and for sure we're starting to see it in the beginning of this transfer window. Again, we're not going to get into transfers today, but I think that colors my perspective on this past year, that we had some things that were in our control. We decided to not keep them in our control. And for as much as we obsess about how much control we have on the pitch, we certainly didn't feel like we took control of the things that we had control of off the pitch. And I think for me, that's an increasing source of my frustration, and something that I think really colors how I view our ownership group and the
Mhm.
club moving forward into the next season. So I can't help but feel that that's one of my lasting takeaways of the season. One that sticks with me as much as, you know, the goal by Rice, you know, at the Bernabeu, or the win against City 5-1 at home, or you and I, for the three of us getting together in Chicago for the 2-2 Manchester City match at the Globe. Those were all great times. Those are great moments in the season. But and certainly meeting you guys is a lasting memory. But and when I think about the club in particular, and the football, it's the stuff that we didn't take control of in January that has me feeling the most angst.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna pick up on, Chris. Is so like you said, kind of like on the field, you could find some of the positives. Kelly mentioned the Newcastle win, so that guaranteed us second place. Obviously, that's not what we're aiming for. Champions League, a lot of dominating versus PSG, all that stuff, but ultimately didn't make it to the final. And I don't know if making it to the final and losing would have been better, just to say that we made it to the final for the second time in our history. But if I'm judging as a whole, like as a club, I can't escape the feeling that our ownership kind of threw away the season. Now, like they threw away the season in January with the idea, with the pretense, with the like, hey, don't worry, guys, summer's gonna be big. And we were having this discussion. I was listening to Tom Canton's podcast, and somebody said we feel this way because of everything we've seen in the past. Now, Tom did a really good job at pointing out that like every single transfer window, bar the January and the last summer, we had an incredible amount of work already done prior to preseason. It's just this past summer and this January that kind of shat all over the norm, so to say, right? And in baseball, they'll say that you're only as good as your last at bat. I don't know what the direct translation to that is. You're only as good as your last penalty. There you go.
Mhm.
So in my humblest of opinions, if you will, it's the fact that they shat the bed at the penalty spot, aka the January transfer window, and the last summer. I can't escape the feeling of bitterness. I can't escape the feeling of you were so close. And as you guys know, I have a long history of saying I don't believe in PSR. I don't believe in financial FFP. I don't believe in it. And I say I don't believe in it because I haven't seen a team get punished for anything severely yet. And before anybody points out like Forest and stuff, what I mean is I haven't seen any big team get punished for it.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like they have so much leeways and there's so much loopholes to get out of this shit that I truly kind of feel like it was the decision of the ownership to not push forward. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that's the off the field. On the field thing, I've said this in the past years ago when like I thought that was kind of under pressure when he was new. When he has the pieces, when he has like when he has a starting 11, we're a really good team to watch. We're very consistent. I mean, last season, lost one out of the entire second half of the season. It's capable, but the fact that we keep on becoming like we keep on hitting these like we're short X player, we're short Y player, it's driving me nuts. And I think where I'm at least mentally, and I told you guys this, like where I'm just kind of tired of the context of injuries and red cards. I think I'm gonna say my bitterness wins me over to say that I can't legitimately say I'm thrilled about this past season. Now, to some negative, to some acceptable, to some positive, however they want to see it. But yeah, I'm split on it. But overly like I'm scoring the season low, and I'm bitter about it to say the very least. But again, I might rate Watkins higher than most people, and maybe I'm fooling myself. I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. Any final statements for you, Kelly?
Yeah, I think maybe my biggest concern, and Christian touched on this a little bit, is the idea that, and this is so hard to like articulate clearly without falling into just like the internet buzzword type of criticism. But I do think that we struggle as a sporting enterprise to take advantage of opportunities that are presented to ourselves. I think we're we're incredibly conservative. We make very slow decisions. We empower people, and I think we have very reasonable and achievable KPIs that keep them here and keep them in jobs. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of pressure, and I think that carries up from the ownership down to the board, down to sporting directors, and down to the manager too. I don't think there's a lot of urgency. That we are very content with where we are at and where we sit in the grand scheme of things. And the cynical view that I've taken up, somewhat tongue in cheek, somewhat tongue firmly in the middle of my fucking face, is that the KPI is to be in the top four, and sufficient that we make that with a match or two to spare. The mission has been accomplished, and I don't think that I've seen anything this season that assuages my concern that we are very, very okay with where we sit in the pecking order, and being thereabouts is the goal. And if everything goes our way some year, we might pull one of our desired trophies out if everything kind of falls in line. But we are unwilling or unable to do the things that we need to do to position ourselves to make those odds be leveraged towards us rather than just kind of hanging around. And I think that basically the summer window last year, which we've done to death, was, whether it's because Edu was leaving or because of bad luck. And I think there was plenty of bad luck with refereeing and injuries and everything, but we just were not prepared for the season. We're not ready to hit the ground running. We chucked points early in the season. Normally, that would put us in position to say, okay, we got to reel some of these back in January. We have, to the degree that PSR or financial fair play are real things, we had the opportunity to do something there. And because Edu was not there and Jason Ato had no power or no trust or whatever, we decided to just say, and I think that's where my sourness comes in, and kind of where, if I was giving a letter grade, I'd give it a C- as a season. And I would do, a 2 to 2.5, 1 through 5 grade, because I think there was the opportunity to do more. And we took the club, we took the fairly audacious and disrespectful to the players, coach, and fans route of just doing nothing. And we basically said, okay, well, we're likely with these injuries and these bad hard luck referee decisions and the fact that our sporting directors here, we probably aren't going to achieve our big goals, and we're probably going to still be in top 4. So we're just not going to do anything at all and just kind of tell Arteta to go and figure it out. And we got your back. You're not going to get fired based on the results of this year, provided you just kind of get in that top 4. That's what I think has happened on like a very glossy, like large enterprise thing. We're just going to be like, whatever, we're chucking this season. And guess what? We almost were in a knife fight for top 4. It got really tight. And we were in the Champions League semifinal. And if we would have done some basic squad maintenance, some normal, achievable, low-end investment by just trying hard and spending a little bit of money, I think we might be in the Champions League final against an old shitty Inter with every chance to do it. And that's bad. That's bad process. That's short-sighted. That's being very, very satisfied with where you are. And I think every kind of 6 months, it feels like the club has done 2 things simultaneously. One, they've reinforced the idea that Mikel Arteta is a very good manager and we have very good players, and we are likely in this cohort of top 4 to 5 clubs and like knockout Champions League football, even when things go bad. We're there or thereabouts, which is good because we started this podcast, we're fucking horrible. We were talking about Arsenal being in the drop zone in winter. That was like when we first started this podcast. It was very bad. So every 6 months, it proves to me that like we have really ensconced ourselves in the top tier of European football and the top tier of a very difficult domestic league. But the other thing that we're doing at the same time is that's where we want it. That's the goal. We've already achieved the goal. So we are unwilling to do the things that our other cohort clubs are willing to do and take some of the risks and do some of the investment and do some of the hard work that it takes to put ourselves in a position to do the big stuff. And I think this season has been a confirmation of this. And we're not talking about the window, but all of these behaviors are reinforcing that we're cool with just being at the table and gambling that if we get some good hands, we don't want to have a fat stack. We won't want to be coming into with any advantage. We're cool with just being here. And I mean, I guess if you want to do things, that's a nice intersection of financial outlay and incoming and keeping ticket prices high and everything. But like, that's what I'm seeing. And I suppose that's why I take a C. If the goal is just to do C work, we've done strong C work, I guess.
C work. Can I'm going to lack of better words, a counter to the argument, because
play devil's advocate for sure.
As you know, I'm also a believer that we're doing enough to stay relevant. Now, somebody made a comment to me when I was bitching and moaning about this on the Twitters. Things that I try not to do, but I found myself all wound up. And this was like straight out. It was probably straight after the elimination of PSG. Probably when I normally like. I guess I'll just tweet ramble stuff here.
Yeah.
And somebody suggested like, hey, they didn't view it like there's any sweet spot to guarantee that you're top 4, but not a title contender. So like just by the inclusion of Declan Rice, and it's kind of like, yeah, it guarantees you top 4, but it could also be a signing that could push you to a title. And he made reference of last season of how close we were. Now, do you find that to be like I found it to be really reasonably honest, where I'm like, okay, if you're around the top, you were consistently second, I totally understand that last season we were much closer than this season, but is there an argument to be made there? Like, can you sympathize with the thought process that there's no sweet spot to only purchase enough players to keep you in top 4 and not to keep you within reach? So like you have a chance, even if it's a slim chance, it's obviously a lower chance than some teams, but it's a chance. So yeah, the sweet spot argument, if you will. Like, do you have any counter to that, or like do you have any strong feelings towards that argument?
I mean, we're the club that does the Peter Cech summer, right? Like we finish second and we just don't do anything. I think
Peter Checkmate. I gotcha.
Yeah, Peter Checkmate. I think that we are a club that we are spurned into action by the idea that we are not part of the aristocratic top. I think that type of prestige drop, that we're kind of a like, not like a banter club for action, but a banter club for results, right? Like, I don't think KSE or the board care if we're perceived as tight asses who punt seasons. I don't think they care about that. I think they go, well, look at, we finished second 3 years in a row. And we go, okay, but you didn't finish first. Like, but yeah, like, who else has finished second 3 years in a row? That's really hard. And it's like, I think the sweet spot. God, I'm going to get stuck up on the first question already. I think that our board and our ownership acts when they're out of the top. Again, the Declan Rice signing was a signing designed to confirm that we are going to stay in the top four for an extended period of time. You go and buy, and he's incredibly marketable. There's other knock-on effects too, that he's like probably going to be the future England captain when Slabhead goes away and Mushmouth retires. Like, it's probably going to be Declan Rice. If Martin Odegaard's ever to leave, or if he has another poor season, every chance that he's going to be the Arsenal captain. So you're making an investment in a person and an international as well as a player, right? And I think we have a really good manager, and the manager can take and get an extra 5% out of the 5% tune out of the players. But the action comes with the goal of that's the goal. The KPI is not there. There's nothing that we have done or will do that should leave any normal. We talk about making cogent arguments, right? There's nothing that we've done in the last 2 years, like since Declan Rice, basically, that would lead you to believe that they're trying to win the Champions League or win the Premier League. This hasn't been, and this is all this put up or shut up summer stuff. And I'm not going to get into the specifics because we have all fucking summer to rally and stress about this. But like, okay, cool. Well, you haven't done anything for like 2 years. Okay. And we do a lot of, also, here's another thing too, none of these, like, if you're hanging out with us, I mean, you're hanging out at a pub table with your friends, right? Like, you're not listening. The big accounts, Arsenal does a really, really good job of keeping podcast hosts and people and journalists and the people who have the ear of the Arsenal online community really close and well fed. And so you see coherent message, you see all these like these connecting pieces going through. Like, we're getting Ollie Watkins stuff where all of a sudden, 5 or 6 of the podcast hosts that are really influential and all of a sudden have official tie-ins with the club all of a sudden are talking about Ollie Watkins and how great he would be, and he's guaranteed 15 to 20 goals. And like, all of the time when they're talking to us, and in the same couple days we're getting messaging, right? That's really, really similar, and all of those things are tied. I think the club itself does a really good job of trying to manage expectations through tight control of message and who they leak information to. And I think that I find that to be very off-putting, and I feel like we're being played, and I feel like we're being managed to think a certain way about what we can do or what we should do. And that's this season. Again, that's what looking at it. We've had bad luck, and we've had injury, and we have a really good manager and some really good players that have found solutions within what's there. But that's all fucking puppet show stuff versus like, did you actually put a team together that could win the Champions League and win the Premier League after you firmly establish yourself as a European knockout team and a top 4 team? The answer is no, they didn't. And I would even guard, they didn't even try. And they didn't try again when they had another shot to help reinforce that in January. And they haven't tried so far for what we're doing. And they hired a new sporting director, and that's great, but like, it doesn't matter. Like, Arteta literally said on a fucking microphone on the last match of the season that it's up to the guys upstairs to do their work. Like, do your fucking job now. I've done my job remarkably well, and I'm taking absolute pelters from everybody. So do your fucking job. And again, my prediction, I'm not, because I've been drinking, I can't hold this. I think that he's going to, if they don't do what they're supposed to, he's going to leave this summer too. And if you want Cesc Fabregas, they're going to go pull him from Inter because he's going to be happy to get this job.
We've got Cesc Fabregas.
Yeah, and it'll pacify the fans too, because that's what they fucking care about. And we'll get
some fans would be pacified.
We'll get James McNicholas, and we'll get Elliott Smith, and we'll be getting all these people who are going to talk about how great Cesc Fabregas is now. And it's going to be the same horse shit because it's easier to pay Cesc Fabregas money than it is to actually do your fucking work. That's why, and that's my fear. And take the mic away from me.
Kelly, you made a good point though, and we've talked about this in the back channels that
I can't remember what I've said to everybody here and what we
oh,
said.
no, it's perfect because
Kelly got included to new groups, so he forgets who he's talking to.
when it's time to go from also rans to champions, it's been shown no matter who the sporting director is, no matter who the manager is, no matter who the players we have at the club, what's the one constant behind all that? It's KSC. And what happens? We have a Petr Cech summer. We have a summer last year where we basically broke even. And Mike, you were the guy that was most upset of the three of us with that transfer window, and you were dead on.
Yep.
We did not capitalize on taking City to the absolute finish line, barely finishing second. You have one result happen one way or the other, right? The opposite would have happened. If we would have turned a draw into a win, we win the league last year. Or if City takes a win and turns it into a draw, we win the Premier League last year. And then we followed up with a net spend of 0 summer and a nothing burger in January. And this is my worry with KSC, is that when it's time to put that little extra in, above and beyond just qualifying for Champions League, top 4, whatever, top 4 is a trophy, haha, joke. But I really do think that that's how KSC kind of think about this, is that they've shown in multiple windows that they're not up for it, that they can't push the boat out just that much more. They can't make the finances matter in order for us to get over the line. And that's really troubling for me. It's really troubling. I looked up some stats. I saw some stats on Twitter the other day. Between 2004, I know they weren't owners yet. They became owners in 2007 through 2013. Looking at the top 6, we actually made a profit. Arsenal Football Club made a profit between those years, 9 years, where Arsene kept us in the top 4. The vast majority of that time period, those 9 years, KSC was a shareholder. You look at then the time from 2018 when they took sole ownership till now, they've only outspent Tottenham by like less than 100 million, Aston Villa less than 150 million. We're not talking about enormous clubs. We're talking about clubs that especially Tottenham, where we joke that they have a hard time winning a trophy. They're our little brothers, and yet they've almost spent as much as we have since KSC took sole ownership. We are 4th in the Premier League in spending since 2018. And so when I hear people say it's anybody's fault or mostly somebody's fault but ownership, I have to point them back to those realities, that we are a club that, and it's been well documented, that the team who spends the most, especially in wages, there's a correlation between spending on wages and success on the pitch. I mean, just look at City and Chelsea the last decade, 15 years. They have spent the most on wages and they've won the most. You think about United historically, right? Not in the last 8 years, but prior to that, when Sir Alex was here, who outspent everybody on wages and fees? It was Manchester United. Again, it's not a panacea for winning. We've seen plenty of situations, United, obviously, in recent history where they can't win the thing because they can't get out of their own way. You see like a PSG, for example. They've spent a crazy ton on fees, and what they do this year, they won the Champions League.
PSG's wage bill, and this is another thing that we can talk about this summer.
Yeah.
The plucky upstarts do it the right way, PSG, their wage bill was wasn't it like 20% or 30% higher than the next closest club in the world? Yeah. And like they represent, they're like 10 times higher than anybody else in their domestic league or something. And so like truly, they bought a different type of player, but they like the hand wringing that we're doing about getting something right. Like they just keep buying over and over and over again, and they just go and bully people out of the way. Like that's the correlation. Like that's, and again, it's like, it's not, like Chris said, this is not a panacea, right? But the problem is that we do 90% of the work, or like, I don't even want to call it an A. Like we get our solid 85B, and we won't stay in the library for another couple hours to get our 92 and graduate with honors, right? Like that's the thing. It's like you've gone so, like, why would you come so far to only come so far? And we do that all the time. all the time, like perpetually. And even like whatever our next goal is, we go right up to it and then just stop. Whatever we do, we go right up to the edge of it and we don't do the next thing ever. And it's not because we're unlucky. It's because we don't have good process, or we don't have ambitious, but we have good process. Obviously, we're really fucking profitable, right? As far as this money pit of a financial endeavor this is. But like, we're past the point now. Like, FSG is basically the same model as Arsenal, but they will do what it takes. They will pay the fucking monster ass wages. We wouldn't do that with Alexis Sanchez. Maybe that was right, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I was looking at Alexis earlier, who is starting at center forward for Chile, by the way, tonight. When he's like my age, which is wild shit. But like, I mean, Alexis, I'm just looking at all this stuff, and it's like we do solid B work, and then we're just good. We just don't study for the final exam. And it's like, if we do the final exam and we study really hard and we put in the extra time and effort and make some sacrifices, we can get an A in the class and graduate with honors, but we won't do it. We already have an 85, so we can do a fucking C minus final and still get a B and still graduate and still go to the next thing. It's one of those things where it's so frustrating because, like, I think there are many people within the club that's not good enough for, but the people who it's satisfactory for are higher up and have all the power. That's the issue, is that because you can deal with clubs that like have like the up top have ambition, but maybe not the process or not the competence. Those guys will come back and they will keep going again and again until they hit the goals the meaningful goals they want. And they'll keep doing the investing, whether it's financial or whatever. But the people that are leading the club, if they have a certain goal that's a tier beneath where they should be, if that's the goal, that's what we're going to keep achieving. And we have kept achieving that. So shift the goal for it. But we don't want to do that because that's hard and takes more money. And like, even the briefing journals, it's all really hard. It's like, oh, this is so, it's not as easy as going to, it's your fucking job, man. Like, it's your fucking job. Go do it. I know it's hard. That's why I don't do it. That's why I sell residential real estate in Minnesota instead of run a multi-billion-dollar football club. I don't give a shit. Go do it. That's your job. It's hard for Mikel Marino to play center forward when he's a defensive midfielder and he's 30 years old. He did that okay. Should Mikel Marino go be the sporting director now? Or behind the board? I don't know.
He kind of looks like a do. I mean, maybe
he kind of looks like a do.
Scored today again.
He made a great center forward run. He played great today, actually.
Yeah.
So to recap, we're not currently thrilled with the current state of the Arsenal. We feel like we were lacking some stuff in the last couple of seasons. We felt a little bit let down. I think it's fair to say for the three of us. I'm just trying to recap here, and we are bitterly disappointed. But I think for the most part, even though we are losing our patience with the current transfer window, and some people may say we're losing our patience a little bit too soon. Some people say it's okay to panic right now, seeing that our rivals are doing a lot of business. But me personally, I could say I'm patiently waiting to see for the business that they managed to do prior to preseason. And I know that the Zubimendi thing has been all but confirmed by he was on the Highbury squad, Mockbell. Sammy? Is it Sammy Mockbell?
Yeah.
He confirmed it that the paperwork has already been signed. So as much as comments that Zubimendi and how many questions he gets asked by Real Madrid, it's safe to say that he's going to be an Arsenal player. So that is a signing that I could count before preseason. I would really like a shiny Sesko or a Gyökeres. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to say something, just a comment, just piggybacking on what Kelly said about the wages. Today, somebody very well-known journal, I can't remember the name of the gentleman that reported it, but said that Gyökeres was open to joining Manchester United. Now, there's no sporting reason for him to want to join Manchester United, but
I should say he's open to making $400,000 a week.
He's also reportedly wants exactly. So look, man, in football, money could definitely buy you happiness. I want to just point out a stat that Miguel Delaney had tweeted shortly after the PSG win, and says before 2008, there had only been one treble winning team from the Big Five leagues in 53 years. There have now been 7 different treble winning teams in the last 17 years. So the influx of money is is a real thing in football. So it's a new landscape, to say the very least, and it's something that we need to adjust. Abreu asked if that's the type of team we want to be. And honestly, Abreu, I don't know how to answer that. I want to be a team that eventually wins. And I know that if we do win, it's going to feel really good. But I would be lying to you if I told you that I never feel jealous of seeing those motherfuckers win at the consistent rate in which they do win. Chris, you wanted to have a closing statement on this?
Well, I just put this in the chat, but I think, somebody wrote a thread on Twitter. I think it was shared in one of our back channels where they were making the point that actually the most egregious thing that KSE has done or hasn't done, depending on the perspective you take, is not just getting it over the line with investment when we've been close. It's also been the structure they've put around the people that they've hired, like Arteta. And I think one of the points they made was that we still are behind in commercial revenue. We make less commercial revenue than Tottenham, despite our massive global fan base. We are an asset. We are a brand that is worth a lot of money, but somehow, some way, the executives that we put in place to grow our commercial revenue just haven't been able to take advantage of that. And I think when we think about the fact that it seems that we're limited by a very conservative ownership group, that the only way we can really increase our spending, make more money available to us, since it appears that we're trying to be as self-sustainable as possible, is to grow our revenue. And we still employ executives who don't seem to be able to leverage the asset that we have in the brand that is Arsenal. And that's a real concern that, and I think this is true across the many franchises they own, is that they often take punts on young guys who are not expensive to hire, that don't demand the highest salaries. You think about, the Nuggets. They've just, they hired a young guy, they got rid of him. They hired the path of least resistance manager to replace him. Same thing with the Rams, although they won a Super Bowl, a very young and experienced guy. They tend to have this MO in their ownership where they don't want to overpay for the proven. They want to, spend less on the unproven and hope they get lucky. And I think it's time that with Arsenal, who are so close to winning so much, and we've done so much of the hard work, and Kelly said it really well 10 minutes ago. We've done our work. We're really close to achieving glory. But I think we haven't done the work necessary to surround the group we have that is working hard for us with the right tools in place to get it over the line. And this is all the stuff that is in addition to, the extra investment. And again, we are limited, it's seemingly by our owners not willing to invest that extra to get us over the line. So the only other way we can do this is to find ways to bring in extra revenue. And that comes from things like commercial, which again, we lag way behind our top 6 rivals in, which needs to be changed. So that's not a really sexy conversation to have. It's not something that probably people get really excited about listening to, but if we're thinking about ways to really optimize what we have and we're stuck with the ownership we have, the only way I see coming out of this is either to sell better, which I hope the arrival of Berta and this new guy that's coming in from Juventus reportedly, who I think might be focused on bringing in profiles that are on the younger end of things to feed our academy and hopefully make ready-made players for first team eventually, or to sell on for big profits. That's one way to do it. The other way is to just make sure you get great sponsorship deals, so that commercial revenue comes in and we can spend that money accordingly. So let's talk about the season again, Mike. Sorry, I know that we were going to get in a tangent on this, but I'm glad we had a chance to at least get that off our chest, because I know it's been a lot of the topic of conversation behind the scenes.
No, I actually like that we got some of the things out of the way, so we could really truly focus on just the whole transfer thing that we got going on next week. So it's glad we impact a lot of our grievances, if you will, that kind of trickled down. I think just out of frustration with how the whole season played out. So it is what it is. We tend to ramble. Anybody that is listened to us more than once kind of knows that we tend to do this occasionally, every once in a while. But we are an excellent palate cleanser. We don't come at you guys every day. We come at you like once a week, once every 2 weeks. And you get to hear us ramble. And, I consider us an excellent palate cleanser for your normal Arsenal podcasters out there, if you will. Now, we are going to try to grade checks notes, grade players, if you will. Now, there's plenty of players that didn't play a whole lot of games. There's plenty of players that had massive breakout seasons. So I don't think we're going to be able to pick apart the entire 20+ man squad. But let's definitely hit some high notes, if you will. Well, Kelly, if you don't mind, let's start from the top, the very few strikers that we had, literally just one. We'll talk about Kai Havertz in the 3 months that we had him.
Oh, sweet
what
guy.
What did he end up being? Let me see. Kai Havertz.
Let's see.
He was on track, right? He was doing. Yeah, he had 9 goals, dude.
He's our top scorer in the league, I think, with 9, which is something.
Which is fucking insane, considering that he was out. That's so bad, dude. Thanks, Kelly. You just upset me.
Yeah.
So,
You're welcome.
do you remember Kai Havertz before the injury, and can you provide him with a decent enough grade, if you will?
I mean, Kai is like an elite soldier, kind of like he's one of those guys where you're not going to produce to like or promote to like captain, but he's like your most reliable foot soldier, right? He's incredibly valuable to the team. He does that hybrid thing where he does. It's like a dash of left 8 and some withdrawn striker and some center forward stuff. And I do think that the club is kind of weird. The reason why Mikel Merino played forward is because he's the guy who can do the most Havertzy stuff. And so that was, of all the options we had, the most contiguous way forward once his hamstring exploded was to play a guy who's like a DM/left 8 at center forward, which is funny to me, which I think it shows what kind of an interesting problem solver that Kai is. So I think he was run down. Kai's biggest problem was going to be finishing. He's not an elite finisher. He never will be. He's usually in good spots, but sometimes isn't. Sometimes is off to one side or the other. But he has a tremendous amount of defensive work. He's really good in the air. He's got soft feet and good technique. He's just not going to be an elite finisher. So, I mean, for the season, if he would have stayed fit, I think that's the type of thing that means that we could potentially be in the Champions League final, or that could be a more comfortable second. I don't think any combination of things that Kai Havertz could have done could have us run down Liverpool this year with everything else. But, I mean, I think for Kai, if we're doing a letter grade, I think it's a solid B season. I don't think he was setting the world on fire. He wasn't elite or anything, but he was very good, doing all the random shit that we asked him to do. And he ran until he broke. And after he broke, he somehow, for some reason, came back and was playing in the last couple matches of the season, which is credit to him. And if I were him, I just wouldn't have played. But recent photos, too, today that we're not supposed to think is cool because everything Arsenal fans do to Chelsea fans is gay or something. Like Havertz is like posting gym pictures, and it's like quite clearly he's putting about 15 pounds of muscle, got himself in really good shape for when he was out. And maybe that's physical robustness, because he's not a super fleet player anyway. He's reasonably fast, but not a high-end burner. I mean, maybe that muscle he put on is going to be helpful for him next year, and he's going to just come back and do what he does, but just do it a little bit better and not get hurt. So, I mean, it's a solid B season for Havertz for me anyway.
I don't got to follow up a grade per se for Kai Havertz. I just wanted to add that, like, it was James Nicholas that made the statement that he's still very well liked in the club, and despite whatever striker we do end up with, he could see him starting another good amount of games. And I did think it was amazing that there was so much pushback on that comment and so much negativity around that comment. I particularly don't think Kai Havertz is horrible. Now, You didn't say he was horrible, by the way.
Oh, no.
And I understand. Yeah, you didn't say that, but I want to clear that up. But I think a lot of people is like, new player, play him, and just like disregard Kai Havertz. I think he's still an incredibly good striker. He does as you guys said, I much rather see him as a striker than a midfield, and I'm actually a little like worried of the idea that potentially with the arrival of a big name striker, he does get pushed back and played in the middle a little bit. I'm a little bit concerned about that. I would love to keep him as the first choice / second choice striker, just the way he is. I'd have zero issues, to be completely honest, if he starts games. I'm not going to view this unless like, insert Watkins, Gyökeres, or Sesko, and they're just having like a season, like every single time they're playing, they're scoring. In that case, you become undeniable, and then sorry, Kai, you just officially lost your spot. But if you told me the minutes would be 50-50, like no new striker is going to have a substantial amount more starting a center striker for the Arsenal the next season, I am willing to make the bold statement, if you will, that I'm comfortable with that. Chris, you wanted to make a comment on Kai?
Yeah, I think Kai suffers from a few things. One is in the modern era of football fandom that comps and aesthetics are really important to the modern viewer. If you don't have a highlight reel that gets people off their seat, you tend to discredit the actual talent that player has. And I think Kai Havertz is one of those players that aesthetically looks a little gangly, a little awkward. He's a big, tall guy, really long limbs, doesn't strike the ball with authority. Again, all things we can criticize him for, but I think what we miss is the value that he brings in other ways. And I think, you look at his goal scoring record this season, again, 9 goals, not a lot, but you think about how many games he played, wasn't a ton. He was on course for something like 18 goals, which is, he would have got him in the top 5 in the Premier League this season. So I think that's a problem that will always follow him. I think that was a problem that Chelsea fans had with him, to be honest. And I think, we were excited to get him, but I think what we're finding is that a lot of our fan base struggles with that same perspective, that he doesn't shine on a comp, and therefore people discredit what he actually is good at. The other thing I think is that I think he's the kind of footballer that doesn't have a natural role in modern football. Like, I think he's more of a second striker than he is a number 9 or a number 10, but most teams don't play with a number 10 or a second striker. And so he always kind of feels like he's ill fit for whatever position he plays in an Arteta system. It doesn't mean that he's not doing well in that system or that he's not trying his hardest. But I think there will always be an obvious flaw in his game that I think people have a hard time ignoring. Mm. And I think it's going to follow him as long as he's at Arsenal and probably at any team, unless the number 10 becomes in vogue or a second striker kind of situation comes back into fashion. And it's unfortunate because I think he brings a lot of value to us in terms of how we play out long. Like, he's a target man when we play long. He wins headers. I was watching right before our pod because I was trying to remind myself about some of the goals we had this season. And I was watching some of the goals he had, and he's a lot more dynamic than I remembered him being in the way that he scored some of the goals. He can score goals in multiple ways: off of his head, with his left foot, running in behind, in traffic. Again, he fluffs a lot too, but he's not a severe XG underperformer. In fact, I was going to look up his stats, didn't have a chance to do it. I'd imagine he's probably right on par with XG, maybe even a little bit over outperforming XG. But I think it's his aesthetics and the fact that he doesn't have really a natural position in a 4-3-3 kind of setup that we play that makes him just look like a bit awkward, a little bit of an ill fit in what we try to do. So
the idea that who's the muscle douchebag that plays for Fulham? Who's that guy? The running a straight line guy.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Traore?
Yeah. So
there you go.
Yeah. Like, people would go and put like Havertz and Traore would like run for 2 minutes in a match, and you'd swear that Traore was like a Ballon d'Or finalist and that like Kai was like a Make-A-Wish kid, kind of, based on how they move. And like, but you're right. I think his blessing is his curse, and that he has a physique and skill set that means that he's like a 6.5 out of 10 in like 4 or 5 different positions. And like a good manager or like a positional football manager, like like Arteta loves that because he can solve a bunch of problems. It's less about I need you to solve the only problem that you're solving is scoring goals. Like Victor Osimhen, right? The only problem that Victor Osimhen solves is being in the box and taking a chance. He doesn't do anything else at all. Like he'll run completely. The only reason that Victor Osimhen exists as a professional football player is to try to get goals for himself. And that's it. And Havertz is like the opposite, the inverse, who solves 800 other problems, but he's only going to solve the score the goal thing at like a 6 or 6.5 out of 10. Because that's not who he. It's like again, like one of my favorite players, Mike, is we've talked about, like Marcus Llorente, who plays for Atletico Madrid.
Oh yes,
I love him because he solves like 800 problems at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You need to progress the ball, he can do that. You need to overlap, he can do that. You need to track back and defend, he can do that. You need to tackle, he can do that. You need to put in a free kick, like he can do all the stuff. He does not have an elite skill that means that you can tack him to the board, right? He doesn't have that. But he is like the best utility player in the world. And players like that are really valuable to good managers who can coach that out of them and who and for ownership and squad builders because they can solve all these problems. And like when you play Kai Havertz, you're not just playing a guy who's a center forward, you're playing a guy who tracks back, who is incredibly dogged, who is good in the air, who's a good hold-up guy, who can get shots, who can, in theory, even though they're not great shots, who will shoot off both feet, who will interchange and can do all this stuff. And I think maybe even what's hurting Kai Havertz too is that like there are a lot of all-rounders that are still not enough specialists to help to solve very specific and important problems. And like so he's always going to be underappreciated. And like even like the Chelsea dipshits who are basically football manager fans in real life, like sitting on the internet, they call him like somebody's like, oh, like why do people, somebody said back, like an Arsenal fan with some Chelsea fan chirping about Havertz, it's like, he won the Champions League final for you. Like, why do you comment on every single one of his things? It's like, he's a fucking donkey. It's like, you're a fucking moron, though. Like, you have a 6-month timeline on all of your players, and then they're dead to you because that's what your ownership, two consecutive ownerships have done. Where it's like, if they don't do exactly the thing that you want them to do in this moment, then they're dead to you. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, he solves an awful lot of problems for us. And again, like, I think it's silly, even if you pay, I mean, anybody outside of like Isak or like Julian Alvarez or somebody like that, somebody who's like really at the tippy top, who's like a 9-figure player. Havertz is going to play a lot of center because Havertz is going to play a lot. And he's going to play a lot because he solves a bunch of different problems at the same time for a manager who doesn't play specialists a whole lot. So anyway, this turned into the Havertz podcast, but.
Another Havertz podcast. So much for that quick and again, checks notes, brief player by player review.
Yeah, we're an hour in. We said one player.
Yeah, exactly. Here, I'll speed things up. Chris, Gabriel Jesus. Okay, wonderful. We got that one knocked out.
Incomplete. That's his grade.
Love it. No notes.
Yeah,
No, keep going.
I mean this as I was going to mean this as a joke, but then I realized that legitimately Merino played more as a striker than he did midfielder. So I guess, I'm gonna judge him based on him being a center defensive midfielder stepping into a striker role, and maybe because of that, I'm gonna be generous with him and give him. If you get Kai Havertz a B plus, I think it's okay to give Merino a B plus or /A-ish. Because I, as you guys know, I'm a sucker for a utility player that is willing to commit himself for the squad and ended up really kind of falling into that position. Now, every once in a while, I would criticize him and say, I wish he was in the box a little bit more, but it's not what Mikel Arteta seemingly wants in a striker. He doesn't want a fox in the box. He doesn't want Filippo Inzaghi. He wants somebody that could trek back, play in the midfield, and then just work his magic and hopefully get into the box late. And I think Mikel Merino executed this as good as you could ask somebody short notice who has traditionally been a midfielder his whole career, gets injured at the start of the flipping season, misses out on 3 months, comes in, plays a handful of games in midfield, and then surprise, you're a striker. I thought he ended up picking the role up fairly well. So I got a lot of love and a lot of time for Mikel Merino. And for all that positivity that I just said, I still have my doubts of him in midfield, and I'm interested, to say the least, to see how he develops in midfield. But this season, like, he impressed me more as a striker than midfielder, and I don't think that's a good thing. I don't know how you guys interpret it, but verdict is out. Go for it, Chris.
I would quickly say I think he's a C. I think he's a C player if he's as a midfielder. I still don't understand the buy for him as a midfielder unless he was always planned to be a sort of a squad player. But as an emergency striker, I think you've got to think about him as an A-, something like that, because I think if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that we would have lost Havertz and Jesus and we were playing Mikel Merino as striker and that he would score whatever, 7 goals, 8 goals,
like 7 or 8 goals in like 15 matches.
Exactly. In a very short cameo, basically 1 every 2 games, I would have called you a liar. I would have been flabbergasted because in looking at his career, there was nothing that was telling me that he was the kind of player that could play, number 9 in an Arteta system. And I know there aren't true number 9s in an Arteta system, but he scored a boatload of goals for us in that run in and in the Champions League that I think made this season end up a lot better than it could have. Let's just put it that way. So I think, I think I'm bearish in the long term because I hope the plan is not to play him any more games as striker. And from what I've seen of him in midfield, I'm assuming that he's playing the exact same role in midfield that we've seen him play for Arsenal. I don't know that he's much more than kind of your average Premier League midfielder, to be honest.
I'm glad I wasn't on that island by myself, by the way, Chris. I thought I was
agree with you.
21. Yeah. So verdict is out, to say the very least.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a perfectly reasonable Premier League. He's a good squad player. That's what I'll say. He's a good versatile squad player. So I think you need to have those. And I don't know why we bought him instead of buying somebody more impactful, but it's probably going to be one of those that this year we're going to say about 50 times, like, man, I'm really glad we have Mikel Merino. And he was literally starting for Spain tonight and scored a fucking outrageous goal and was really good. So my sneaky feeling is that him playing as a central forward for us probably helped him be a more valuable player because it made him more comfortable in those positions. And I think that we probably will find ourselves in positions where we're a little more kitchen sinky next year too, where we'll instead of having a bunch of teenagers on the bench, we'll actually be able to go for matches where we're down 1 or drawing. And I got to tell you, if I saw Merino name go up in the big board at 72 minutes, I'd be like, fucking let's go. If we need a goal, he's going to be there.
Yeah, fair point.
So, I mean, I think he's going to be useful. I think he was, I agree with you guys, a weird buy and not a great fit, but I think he's probably going to be a really useful player to have around for the next couple of years, in addition to being an incredibly useful player in the last couple months of the season last year. So, I mean, bad process, okay outcome seems like the way forward with Merino.
That's a fair way of looking at it. All right, let's go out on the flanks then, guys. Here, let's try something a little bit more controversial, if you will. Chris Martinelli. I'm about to pin you against Avedel in the live chat.
I think Martinelli has had for most of the season, except for maybe the last few weeks where I think he started to come alive again. And I don't know what was behind that. I'd love to know because I'd love to help repeat that. I think we need a Martinelli because in my mind, Trossard leaves this summer and Martinelli becomes a guy that rotates with another winger and comes on for very specific game states and very specific opponents. But I think what we saw from him in 22-23 is going to be difficult to repeat without some sort of change in how we play, which I don't see from Arteta. And I think that was reflective in his season. He had quite a down season again, and I was kind of hopeful that he could hit something between what he did in 22-23 and 23-24. But unfortunately, I think his season was more 23-24 than the previous season. So for me, he gets a C. And I think we need more from him. Now, granted, I think left wing is an interesting position in world football where I think there are fewer elite players on the left than there are on the right, which is odd because so many teams play what?
I'm sure you're saying this nice step thing, but like right footers would play there for most.
Exactly. Yeah. Inverted. Most teams play an inverted winger on the left-hand side. So it's right footers. You would think that, across the population, the vast majority of people in the population are right-footed, right-handed, etc., versus left-footed, left-handed. But seemingly we're in a situation where I would say more elite players, when you compare the two wings, are playing off the right, with a left dominant foot. So you think of Lamine Yamal and Saka and Salah, and we could keep, the list goes on and on. So while he might be a top 10, top 12 kind of winger in the world, I think that's a market opportunity for us to get better in. And I'm sure we'll talk about this in our transfer pods, but I would love to see him move to more of a rotational role, something where, again, we play with him in very specific game states against certain opponents. I don't think that we get the best out of him when we have to play against the repeated mid and low blocks that we tend to face in the Premier League. I think I would have to go back and look at the stats. I would imagine that he actually probably had better returns and outcomes in Europe because we tend to face less of that overall. And I think that's where he shines, when he's a big space player, not a small space player in my mind, because he's quite fast and he's quite direct. But when you give him small spaces to operate in, I think he looks a little lost. And I don't know that if we're going to win the Premier League that we can continue to rely on him game in and game out. I think that is an opportunity, and I think left wing is a place where I would want to improve on moving forward, which is why I think we're seeing a lot of links to historically Nico Williams, recently Rodrigo. I think the club also feel that there is potentially an opportunity to get better in that position. So for me, I can't give him more than a C. I think his return hasn't been good enough. 6 goals, 7 goals a season, 4 assists, just not enough for a team that's trying to win the Premier League. So
yeah, I kind of feel guilty saying that. I feel like I for a starting winger, I feel like I'm owed 10 goals.
Yeah.
I say owed tongue in cheek, but I just feel like they should be hitting double digits, and maybe I'm being a little bit unreasonable because of what Saka puts out as far as output, and maybe that's asking for a little bit too much. But yeah, to your point, he had the one season that was an outlier. He scored a ton of goals that season, but then after that, he kind of fell off a cliff, at least in front of a goal. And the main criticism that we've thrown the most at him is that he tends to put his head down, run, and he typically doesn't have the best final third decision making. No. That's just my broad opinion about him. So yeah, look, I don't, and we'll talk about this next week. And I mentioned this because I am in a group with a good friend that really, really likes him. I don't necessarily dislike him. I don't think he's the worst issue in the squad that we have. I don't think he needs to immediately be replaced. I prioritize other issues within the squad than the left wing, but ultimately I think it's within the top 5 things that I would like to kind of upgrade on, and I don't think that's being completely unreasonable saying it's a top 5 issue. So I guess a C. I think is a C. Did you give him a grade, Chris?
I gave him a C. I think the one redeeming quality he does add, which to his credit, I think he works really hard. I think he's not a guy that's sitting there collecting a paycheck or, not interested in improving or working hard for the team. I mean, he does a lot of defensive work. He will run his butt off until he's exhausted, to his credit. But at the end of the day, the problem we had this season was scoring goals, and you need your wide players to score goals in the kind of system we play. And unfortunately, he didn't give us enough. So
I think the concern is that his big goal season, his 15 goal Premier League season, is probably going to be his career outlier, and he's more likely going to be an 8 to 10 goal per season on a very good team whose consistent wide starter should be scoring more than that. So yeah, he does a lot of hard work, and he seems like a great guy, and I think that he would be an excellent wing back for Juventus.
We're going back to the wing back.
No, and I say that not tongue in cheek, but parodying myself a little bit. I think he's an A+ defensive winger. and he runs his hole off, and he puts himself in positions on a counter-attacking situation where he's really good. I think in a structured Mikel Arteta system, that means that he's on the wing a lot. I don't think that his skill set and what he does is lined up for the best outcomes for the type of football that we play now. And it's not always, but how we play now, which is a lot of control and what Saka does. And I understand what very few people can do what Saka does, right? Like playing ISO, being able to handle two players. But the reason why Nico Williams is there is because and again, I've watched Nico Williams today against France. Like that is an extraordinary one-on-one dribbler who's very comfortable just fucking elite running at retention, sprinting at players. And Martinelli is a space and pace guy and not a tight area ISO winger. Like he just has a different skill set. What he does well, and he'd be one of those players where we'd sell him for 40 million and he'd go and just explode in the right system, and we'd be like, oh, Martinelli. Like, but it doesn't matter because Arteta loves him. He does all sorts of good stuff. So we're never going to sell him. He's going to retire here probably. So whatever.
I will say that, yeah, just on the last thing that you said, I've said this previously. There's what we see and there's what Mikel Arteta sees.
Mm-hmm.
And he must see something very special because he loves the dude. So
he sees something very useful. I don't know if it's special, but it's very, very useful. And if he doesn't have to go and find another one of those guys, he's probably all for keeping him.
He's going to inevitably be wonderful in a 3-4-3 system when we play three at the back, trying not to get relegated. Mikel Arteta, and he's going to be an excellent win back. I'm going to piggyback on that one just for
Sir, this isn't Manchester United.
Yeah.
Isn't that Manchester United trying not to get relegated?
Trossard had equal goals to Martinelli, 8 in the league, 2 in the Champions League. And look, I've always had this weird thing where expectations has always been my issue, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so therefore I judge Martinelli harder in the sense that he's our starter and he's the preferred option on the left flank for Mikel Arteta. So I can admit that I have rose-tinted glasses, I guess, with Trossard, and maybe what he did for us last season is carrying me more than what he did this season. He wasn't as impactful, but I still think he is a decent value to our squad, and I think he's a decent person to have around, is what I'll say. So based on the pain of the ass that he is, how clinical he can be, he was a little bit less clinical this season, but scored some fantastic important goals last season. I think he's somebody worth keeping around. There's conversation about extending his contract. And by the way, if they extend his contract, I think that's our left wing's done, by the way. Yeah, I think that's Trossard and Martinelli for next season, but more on that next season as we continue to say that for the podcast that we're going to talk transfers with. I think if we give Martinelli a C, I'll give Trossard a C as well. And it's just based on the expectations that I had for him when he came in. And another thing that I'm big in love with him is his versatility. Yep. And I know that mileage may vary for a lot of people because people will say he's not a striker, he's not a midfielder. Maybe not, but he fucking played there. He came in clutch, whether you like it or not. He made himself available, whether you like it or not. More to come about a certain Ghanaian midfielder. We'll talk about his positions in the season. 5. But I just think he's a really valuable player, and he performed well for the 15 mil that he costs, is what I'll say. Chris, you want to come in and be slightly more critical than me, or how are you feeling?
I mean, I'm looking at their underlying stats and
ill stats.
I know.
Ew.
They've got the same exact goals, basically the same XG. Trossard, I think, was a bit had a few more assists, and we know assists are a noisy stat because it all depends on whether or not the guy you passed it to actually scores. And I think Martinelli does probably more of the work off the ball that Arteta demands. So for me, it's a wash. I think I'm broadly in alignment with you, Mike, in that they had very similar seasons. if you ask me if I'm forced to choose who I'm getting rid of, unless someone comes in with a big bid for Martinelli, I'm keeping Martinelli. And I think it's because he's one of the few guys, maybe the only guy in our forward line that has, I don't know how to describe it. I wouldn't call it world class or maybe an elite pace, but he has pace, which is something I think we severely lack in this squad at the front end of the pitch. And if there's a situation where you need to put a game to bed, or you've got a team where you can exploit the right side of their defense by getting in behind, I want Martinelli on the field. And I don't think I can say the same thing about Trossard. So if you're asking me if I had to sell one of those players this summer, fee irrespective of the fee, let's say someone's offering us 30 million for Trossard or 30 million for Martinelli, I'm keeping Martinelli, A, because he's younger, B, because I think he does some of the things that are unique that we need in the squad somewhere. And yet I'm still wanting an upgrade on both, if you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah, definitely.
So all the things you said about Trossard are true, but if I'm keeping one of them, I'm grading them the same. If I'm keeping one of them, I'm keeping Martinelli for those reasons.
Yeah.
And again, as you guys know this, I have a bad tendency of maybe pushing back sometimes when I don't need to push back. And I think what I see is when I go online and I see people defending the specific player like so hard and but holding the player that is supposed to be the squad player at what I refer to as higher standards in Trossard, I get a little, okay, let me poke at this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guilty. I'll admit to that. So, but equally as good in my opinion. Neither of them cost a whole lot. And to Chris's point, I would probably be okay with an upgrade, but like I said earlier, not really high up on my list. I almost moved to midfielder, but I forgot. I mean, I dare you not to give Saka an A+, Chris, but I mean, have at it. Give it a go. He went missing for a long period of the season. So
Where was he? Where was he even?
Where was he? I could have swore I didn't see him on the score sheet for months.
He didn't show up to the Emirates. It's hard to grade a player that has a massive injury and is gone for 3 months. I mean, if I'm grading him based on the time he had on the pitch, he definitely gets an A from me because he's our best attacker. I think he's improved in 2 areas this year. I think one is becoming more unpredictable. I think I saw him go to his right foot more this season when he was taking on defenders, which I think makes it really tough to defend him because you don't know if he's going to the byline for a cross on his right foot, which I think has improved massively, or if he's going to cut in the left foot and score one of those patented left-footed goals. So that's the one thing. I think 2 is his delivery off corner kicks. I was looking back at, again, our goals for the season, and when the ball is being struck from the one corner where he gets to kick it with his left foot as an in-swinger into the 6-yard box, he's putting it on a dime every time. And rival fans are like, oh, you guys are just set piece FC. You guys can't score in open play. All you do is score set piece goals. Well, I don't see your fucking best players balls into that 6-yard box like Saka is. And they're like, oh, he's got so many assists because all he does is get assists from corner kicks. Well, yeah, I don't see any of your players doing that. If it was so easy, why aren't you guys doing it? So I think he's improved massively in those 2 areas in particular. And for that, I think he deserves a lot of credit, which is why I'm giving him an A. But I think, I want to see now, hopefully with a summer where he is largely putting his feet up in terms of playing competitive football and getting a mental rest, I think, which he desperately needs because he plays a lot of football in general. I think we need to see another step up next season if we're going to win the trophies we need. And I think those expectations are going to rise yet again for a player like him, because he's going to be entering that year 24, which is starting to enter into his early to mid prime years. And we're going to see the kind of footballer that is reflective of kind of the peak of what we think he can achieve as an individual. And I would expect something like, I don't know, 30 goals in all competitions, probably at least 10 assists in the league. So yeah, big expectations, but he's the guy with the big contract now. He's the face of this project, and he keeps taking steps up. Let's see if he can take another one next year.
Just on the question that they were asked in Arsplug this week, do you think he's capable of 25 plus goals in a season?
In the Premier League
In all
or
comps?
in all comps?
I believe it's all comps, yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think he already has.
I like the certainty that both of you guys said. In fine-tune said, oh, for sure. I like that.
I mean, not in the Premier League, because like that would mean he's like just shy of Holland. So he's up there with, I mean, in all comps, because he's going to play a lot of domestic cups. Oh, for sure. Like he could definitely do 35 plus contributions and 25 total goals.
Yeah, just this season he had 12, but
like dead.
As we know, he only played basically half the season. So
mute Mikey.
Oops, sorry. From a very high with Bukayo Saka, we're going to go to maybe a slightly lower one that maybe left a lot of people a lot to be desired, but our captain, Captain Odegaard, he struggled a lot. I mean, I know that right flank went through a lot throughout the season, but Kelly, it seems like the birth of his child really derailed him. But prior to that, he wasn't doing all that hot. I mean, this is, even by his own admission, he said it publicly multiple times, this has not been a great season for him. So how harsh are we going to be with our captain, Kelly?
Well, I agree with him. A lot of it is the expectation you set, and he's been he's the club captain. He's been a very high-end contributor for years now. He didn't have a good year, and I think that there's an injury factor there. I think there's a life change factor there. I think there's the fact that for about half the season we're cobbling together pieces around him and playing Mikel Merino at center forward and playing anybody. Just we're trying to figure out which first team players we had that were available to play for matches in the second half of the season, knowing that nobody could really come off the bench. We're playing Kieran Tierney as a wide forward a lot. It was kind of a mess, and I think he struggled with that. But the things he can control are his ball striking. I think he had by far the worst ball striking season of his career, between poor free kicks and inconsistent basic contact shooting. I think it was poor. I think he got really, really light physically, and so was pushed off the ball. He's always been a wiry guy, but he lost too much weight, and I don't know what exactly is the reason for that. But it was not a good year, and I would hope that in the middle of his prime, it's a low outlier, largely informed by a change in life circumstance and a significant injury that took him out for a couple months. So, I mean, I think it's a C-, really, and it's grading on a curve because he's a very good player and he's one of our best players, but it's a C-. He did not have a good year, and it wasn't good at any point this year. It wasn't like he started out on fire and then his ankle got fucked and then he was struggling the rest of the way. He just didn't have a good season wire to wire. He needs to make some changes to make sure it doesn't happen again.
What do we make of that? For most of the season, he seemed like he just couldn't strike a ball, and then all of a sudden, we saw that shot he had against PSG that Donnarumma made a world-class save on, and since then, it's like he's remembered how to strike a ball. Do you think it's confidence? Do you think it's like fully recovering from that ankle injury? Do you think it's a combination of all that? Do you think it's something else? Like, what do you guys think?
I think it's probably almost certainly multivariable. So like it's all of it. He's hurt. He didn't have a lot of confidence because he wasn't shooting well. He got some fitness. Maybe Kai showed him what creatine was, which was probably helpful.
He still looks emaciated, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, again, Clive Palmer always talks about the cheekbones, and like you could like basically see into his ear, looking at him straight on because
I
he was
wonder
so light.
I wonder if he changed his diet. All jokes around, like
It seems like I went vegan halfway through the season type of deal.
that's what
you're
his
talking to Bellerin.
He went the extra Bellerin route.
Yeah. There's a reason why he's on fucking Real something's bench, not the good Real.
Real Betis.
Whatever.
Miss me some Bellerin. We need a defender.
Do we?
No. I said,
does he defend? Is he a defender, Mike?
Yeah. None of those statements I made collectively were.
I would rather play Sonia at right back than get Bellerin back, and I'm not joking. I think Sonia's older than me.
Well,
Cedric Suarez. Can I interest you in a Cedric Suarez?
Yes, if it's a choice between the two, yes, you could. 100%, you could.
You know who Mikel Arteta would play at right back? Thomas Partey.
Thomas Partey.
I would. If a game for my life, 100%, I would play Thomas Partey. I would play whatever Tomiyasu could give me right now with his like knee arthritis. A game for my life, I'd play him there.
What about Carl Jenkinson?
Him too.
All of the above, Chris. Thank you for asking.
We're going to be the Hector Bellerin of Arsenal podcast next year. I
just know it. I might not even put it up for a vote. I might just go with it. Be completely honest with you guys.
And that's when Kelly just decides to quit the podcast.
Don't confuse me with somebody who has something better to do, guys.
Yeah. No. What do that? I'm going to give Thomas Partey an A. Because he's available
to piss people off.
Yeah, because I like to piss people off. No, he was incredibly available today. He was available this season. He came in clutch in multiple games.
Yep.
I remember the look. By the way, was he play? I think he played left 8. If I'm not mistaken, played left 8 or he played on the right in midfield. And I predicted that certain Laney was going to play on. I like what I was says. I'm drunk. He played on the right versus Spurs, and he played well. He's played 6. He's played right back. And I just remember Chris telling me there's no possible way he's never played there. And I'm like, no, he's technical and versatile as shit. Trust me, Arteta doesn't really give a shit where he plays. He just wants him on the field. So, look, I'm going to use the Martinelli defense. You guys could judge my craziness, but you know who else really fucking likes this player? The goddamn coach. Plays him every single time he has an opportunity. And I think he has been fantastic this season. Only potentially rivaled by one other midfield who is next. So
I'm going to agree with you, too. I'm just going to rubber stamp this. He was more available. He was really good when he was available. He was versatile. He fell on the grenade on right back when he had to. People don't like him because of all the stuff and all the things, but he had an A season. He had almost certainly his best season for Arsenal at a time we least expected and most needed it. So A for Partey for sure.
I'll give him a B+, but I think it's because running the other way towards his goal, he's not great.
It's not good.
I mean, in transit, and I think it shows up against certain teams. I think it looks even worse at right back. I think we need to be careful about the contract we give him this summer. And how much we decide to pay him. I think he is slotted for that Jorginho role where he plays 1,200 minutes or whatever in the league. He spells Zubamendi if we get him because he can do Zubamendi-like stuff. But he does have warts that are only getting worse when it comes to his physicality. And I think, his availability is to be commended, and maybe that stuff, those vulnerabilities are diminished when he plays fewer minutes, potentially, but that is a concern for me. So I would give him a B+, but I do think I agree with the sentiment that this is probably his best season at Arsenal. Mm-hmm. I think first and foremost because he was available.
Yep.
I'm generally curious to see who ends up playing more minutes, Mikel Merino or Thomas Partey next season.
It's actually a really good question.
A good question. That'll be something we do in our season preview.
Depends on what we don't do. Because we're not going to do some of the stuff we need to do. It depends on what we don't do.
Sir, we're not going to do a lot of the stuff that we're supposed to do. Is my prediction. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Mikel Marino is going to be our new starting left wing, guys. Left winger.
yeah, no, I am.
Arteta would probably squeeze
I would
10
always
goals
say
out
it
of him
best.
too.
Arteta has a Wenger level loyalty to Thomas Partey. That man's gonna. Hey, at this point, I'm questioning who's gonna play more, Declan Rice or Thomas Partey next season.
Don't put that in the universe, bud. Oh God.
Chris, one more for you. Look, you got get the ball rolling with Saka. Now you get the ball rolling with Declan Rice. Not a bad one, man. You get to talk about all the superstars. So talk to me. I mean, look,
I think it's so lucky.
You are the lucky one. I have the unpopular belief that like them two are the best players of the season. Like it's a toss up for me, but I understand what Declan Rice did in the quarterfinal of a quarterfinal, excuse me, of the Champions League. So have at it. What's your say on Declan Rice?
I think it's easy to forget the first couple months of the season where I think he struggled physically. I don't think he looked right. I think he had played too much football. But from about November on, and I'm estimating, I could be misremembering, I think he took another jump in his levels, even beyond last year. I mean, I think the pinnacle of it, not to oversimplify what he adds to the team, but his Champions League run in the knockouts was extraordinary, and especially that two-legged tie against Real Madrid was unbelievable. It's kind of like, those flashbulb moments you have in your life where you'll never forget where you were and something happened, something important happened or something devastating happened. We all remember when 9/11 happened. We all remember where we were. We all remember when our kids, where we were in the hospital room we were in when our kids were born. We all remember the day we got married. I'm not saying this is necessarily on par with those with those moments, but I don't think I'll ever forget the moment when I saw Declan Rice hit both of those free kicks in the same game at the Bernabeu against Real Madrid within 10 minutes. I think he's always had the engine. I think he brought the engine with him from West Ham. I think what he's added is his on the ball abilities, I think have grown leaps and bounds. And I don't know if that's because he has more responsibility and is in positions where that stuff jumps off the television screen at you. I mean, the fact that he became our set piece guy when we were going for goal over Odegaard for the last quarter of the season is remarkable. The fact that he's now taking all of our corner kicks on the one side where there's a right-footed in-swinger, and he's just like Saka on that side where he puts it on a dime every time in that 6-yard box. He was a lethal force on set pieces, from the moment he got that responsibility. And then that's not even to mention all the stuff he does running his pants off. I can't remember what game it was, but it was an important game where he makes a game-saving tackle running back 60 yards to tackle a guy in the box. I don't know if you guys remember that game.
Yeah.
But I remember that was a really important game where if he doesn't make that tackle, the player probably it's a shitty time for all of us. So yeah, he's becoming an all-around midfielder, and he does have flaws. He doesn't have that quality that Thomas Partey has, which is why I think the two of them play really well together because they balance each other out. Partey's got that ability to receive, on the half turn, spray balls out wide, first touch. I think Declan sometimes needs a few more touches, but what he lacks in that sort of quality, he makes up for in his dribbling ability, his engine, his off the ball work, his ball striking ability. All those things are world class, and he makes us feel like we've gotten a steal on that buy from West Ham every time we see him play. Declan Rice, we got him half price. It's maybe the most true song we sing of any player in the squad. So for me, he gets an A.
Yep.
He's not my player of the year though, and that's because
I like that a lot. All right, boys.
Yeah.
So we got exactly
rubber stamp A for Declan Rice. Awesome, best player in the club besides Saka.
Behind Partey. No,
and maybe Gabriel and Saliba.
For a second, I thought I left Chris speechless, but turns out he's just frozen. There he is. He's just hanging back to the stream right now.
Yeah, I thought you shut him up, but no.
Let
Not so
me
much.
remove this one and add that one. There you go.
Sorry, guys, my wireless took a crap for like
I-
3 minutes.
I said I made a silly Thomas Partey. You said Declan Rice is the best, and I said just behind Partey, and I didn't hear anything from you, Chris. And I'm like, I either left him speechless or he's frozen. And I'm like, oh, he's frozen.
Damn.
Definitely frozen.
I did end it by saying he gets an A from me, but he's not my player of the season because of the first part of the year for me.
Yep.
Okay.
You did the mic drop.
Boys, we're gonna try. If we want to get to the other questions that we have very quickly, we're gonna have to go through these 5 defenders fairly quickly. And I say 5 because not a lot of them played.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Jiri and Timber.
Me?
Kelly.
Go Kelly.
A for sure. 100% A. One of the best shutdown defenders in Europe. Better ball progressor. Coming back was incredibly robust. Playing off an ACL. A. 100% A.
Oh, short and brief. I absolutely love that. I'm gonna rubber stamp that, as you said. A. Coming back from the injury is absolutely amazing, and I don't think he's had a subpar performance throughout the entire season, and just coming back with the physical limitations and adding just the fact that he was playing injured at the end of the season.
Yep.
Flipping amazing.
Yep.
Chris, let's talk about William Saliba.
He has set an incredibly high bar for what we expect from him. I'll give him a B+. I think I think the amount of minutes he had to play this season, which I think were maybe the most of an outfield player, or certainly in the top 2 of any outfield player for Arsenal, I think it started to show in his late season appearances. He's still incredibly robust and a smart defender, really good on the ball. I think though he got mentally worn down towards the end of the year, which I think started to make some mistakes creep into his game, which we saw again sort of highlighted in the last quarter of the season. So for me, B+, but I think he did an admirable job of losing his partner in Gabriel Magalhaes. He had to partner with Kivior to make that work. So yeah, for me, really solid, but I think perhaps not quite at his very best.
Yeah, I think the revolving doors of partners that he had kind of played a part to your point, and I guess I'm going to insert myself here because I skipped myself on this one, so I'll go back to Kelly after this, and following up on that to what many of the live chat believe to be the player of the season. I believe to be the player of the season, and at least a very defensive standard, because you could rate defender differently than an attacker, and I fully get that, but Gabriel just continues to grow in stature within the club. He continues to come in clutch. He's ironing out mistakes that he has within his game, becoming more and more of a vocal leader. He doesn't have the captain armbar, but he's completely respected. He's always defending his teammates. He's linked to hopefully extending his contract and avoiding Saudi money. For me, player of the season, A+ or A++. Avedeo gave Rice, so I guess I'll give my player of the season an A++. That's Gabriel for me. Any other? Oh, he added goals to his game as well. Yeah. Might I add? I just want to point that out. Anybody want to piggyback on that one? Because I know Gabriel is kind of a big topic.
Just set piece monster, both offensively and defensively. I mean, the joke was we could only score set pieces this year, and he was a big part of the reason why. I think we stayed in a lot of games where we couldn't score from open play. And I think, too, when he went down, our set piece goals dried up, but also our ability to defend them went to shit. So I think that's a big reason why I think we struggled without him. And he is also my player of the year, Mikey. I agree. I think he took a massive step up this year.
There's no other player that on corner kicks does what he does. The entire mood of the defense changes, and they shit themselves when he's coming up on a corner kick, which is like an incredibly low XG, low expected threat situation. And when he starts walking up on corners, everybody holds their breath. And that's a really, really important weapon that leads to goals, not just from him, but to other players. And again, he's an elite defender too, an emotional leader, somebody who goes and is, for a guy who has played all over the world and didn't really stick anywhere, is like, and is from Brazil, is somebody who seems very, very deeply ingrained as in Arsenal, drenched in Arsenal, watches the matches with his leg up and cries when we score in the Champions League. Like, this is a very, very important player and human and man for Arsenal. He's going to be one of those guys who is, we're going to remember him like we remember Gilberto Silva, and how we remember him and how we connect him to the club, I think.
He posts photos of the Emirates pitch with a heart on his Instagram, and it just makes Mike so happy.
He's one of one, I think. Maybe even, this is going out there, but like, he has some of the other small kind of like tug at our heartstrings factors that will always love him. Yeah, always, no matter what happens from here on out.
Yeah, pointed out to me earlier that he was one of Mikel Arteta's first signings, or at the very. And I feel like to work under Mikel Arteta for a very long period of time, I feel like you have to be mentally really strong, because it must be fucking exhausting. So, great player. Glad he's at the club, and hopefully he extends. And Saliba extends, and we got one hell of a partnership.
Just a random thing about Gabriel too. From all the places that he has played, he's not played more than 39 matches for any other club. And that's with Lille before he came here. He's played 160 matches for Arsenal. So, like, there's Arsenal and there's everything else. And he's literally now, at 27 years old, now just entering his prime for a center back. So getting that contract signed, getting him paid, consummate his contribution on and off the pitch. And there's likely another 160 matches for the club in him.
Would be flipping amazing. Kelly, I'm going to stick with you. Going back to our rotation, I got to give him a shout, because he came in after the absence of Gabriel with that injury, unfortunately, that occurred. I think he came in, man, like barely playing football, and he did absolutely great. It's Kivior.
Yep. B+ for Kivior. He did better than we could have thought. When he got a run of games, he looked really, really solid. He's not an elite defender. He doesn't have the ceiling that Saliba and Gabriel have, but who does? Like, he's a really, really good on the ball, has some good sprinter speed. Like, he's a starter for over half the clubs in the Premier League, and that's our backup, and who hasn't played a whole lot either. So, I mean, I think he's B+. He didn't an A or an A+ would be if he was able to overtake one of the other center backs and establish himself as a regular starter, but he's not, because you can count on one hand the amount of players who can come into this team and dislodge one of them. So B+, really good season. And if this is the last contribution he made was the back half of this season and he sold for a profit, he can think very highly of himself. But if he stays there and he's the guy who's backing up both positions like he did the last match, he played right center back, like, great. Sign me up. Totally, totally great.
More of that.
Which you wouldn't have said this time last year.
No.
You were all like, you know what? Doesn't seem like he has a future at Arsenal, but I would totally take him as a squad player.
Yep. And again, like, if one of those other guys gets hurt again for a month, like, okay, no problem. We got it.
Dude was playing left back for us 2 seasons ago, which is
I don't want him to do that anymore. I'd rather him play right center back than
I agree that he seems more comfortable there, to say the very least. Now, last but not least, and I guess this might bleed into our next comment moment of the season potentially for one of us, but I mean, give Miles Lewis-Skelly a rating, Chris.
I mean, A+. 17-year-old doing what he did. Putting in the entire country of England on strings, especially those that don't support Arsenal.
Yeah,
I mean, he's got Newcastle fans upset because he starts over Lewis Hall. He's got Tottenham fans upset because he'd be their best player.
Yeah.
He's got City fans upset because he made fun of their precious Cabbage Patch doll and Erling Haaland. He's got, I mean, he just has everybody on strings, honestly. He is, I mean, it's no mistake that he already is capped for England. He he is everything and more we could have ever expected from anybody playing that position, let alone a 17-year-old. He had a key goal against City. He shut down that right side against PSG, where we really needed him because their wingers are exceptional. What can you say about the guy? I mean, my big question now going forward is he a left back moving forward? Do we move him into midfield in the long term? Like, where does he settle? Because he's too good to stay out of the squad, out of the starting 11. Obviously, he's not going to play every game. He's still young. We have to definitely manage his minutes and the expectations and make sure we don't overplay him at a young age, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But long term, where is he best at? I can't imagine him being better in a position than he is already at left back. But I mean, historically, that's not been his position. In the academy, he was a central midfielder. So I'm curious to see where we deploy him moving forward. And I'm happy if he's a left back in the short term, but I wonder if medium to long term, he's even better somewhere else. So yeah, A plus for me. And that's based on what I expected from him, right? No one expects someone coming into a season at 17 that he's going to play that many minutes, let alone take those minutes and make us forget about Tomiyasu and not miss, Calafiori to injury and, not pine for, the ghost of, whatever left back that we prefer, Nigel Winterburn or Nacho Monreal, or pick your favorite left back, Tierney, etc. He's played that position as good as anybody, and I think that inverted left back role is not an easy one to master, but he mastered it really well, very, very quickly.
Short-term future, I'll say I think he's going to be a left back. Long-term future would be midfield. That's just my sense on the conversation that you said, but it's hard to get better of a season with everything added, as you said, just starting out of nowhere, just came out of nowhere, started playing at left back, executed absolutely well, played brilliantly versus top teams, Boston and Bernabeu. There's nothing to not love about this player. And like you said, had the entirety of England, anybody that is not an Arsenal supporter on string. So you'll love to see it. Kelly, we're going to transition now into the moment of the season, if you will. Do you got one? Do you got a nice spicy one for me?
The moment of the season? Oh, God. Conventional moment of the season is the second Declan Rice free kick. I think that's
Chris,
probably the best.
By the way, was kind enough to give us these topics a week ago, and Kelly and I'm convinced we did no research whatsoever.
Zero.
On this.
No, we do it live, Mikey. You know us. No, so the second Declan Rice free kick was. There are very few moments in football, especially when we watch and are so involved as we are, that we literally can't believe, and I could not believe that. So that was a moment. It's as high as I've gotten on Arsenal in quite a while. So that's my moment of the season, and it led to the best European result that we've had in a very, very long time. So that's that one. Low key, sneaky moment of the season was probably when us three were all together and Leandro Trossard got the bullshit red card from Michael Oliver
for all the wrong reasons.
Because it set kind of a precedent for how the season was likely going to go. And that was one of those things where you and all three of us were together for the first time ever. And
yep.
That was, I was incandescent with rage. And that moment will probably be etched. And we kind of heard about it because like the stream in the bar that we were in was about 45 to 60 seconds behind. And so we kind of heard the mumbling in our drunken stupor that he was getting sent off. And then when that was why he was sent off, it was, I mean...
We were apoplectic. That's the word.
Incandescent with rage. And I recall specifically this, again, many drinks in, there were a couple of City fans that after the end of that match walked out of the bar, and I was ready to go to jail in Chicago.
Yeah,
beating the shit out of that guy. And he was legitimately, the screaming that was happening on that like 50-yard walk from the end of that bar out, he made a very, very big mistake bringing his gal there today or that day with his City shirt on. It was quite something, and I was involved in the scary.
Showed up to an Arsenal bar with 250 fans in it, as with a
He
city.
knew what he was doing.
Less than 5 City fans in this bar.
There was 2, I think, maybe 3.
There was 3 total, and that guy was bricking it on his way out the door.
Yeah.
It was not good, and I contribute directly to that.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Just piggyback on that story, Kelly, is you never know what type of drunk a person is until you're with them drunk. And I was like, I saw you looking at him like, please don't let Kelly be this type of drunk. That's all I thought to myself. Please,
we don't want to bail him out of Cook County Jail. That's not a place you want to go to.
Thankfully, I didn't push anybody. I didn't do I was just all verbal and all general, not specific. So
tough one. Look, Chris, I'll let you go. You go second on this one because you're more prepared. Unless you have a first, second, and third, and in that case,
just to be different, because I think the moment of the season is the Real Madrid second leg tie. Pick your favorite goal of those, or the moment where you felt like it was over. It could be the Declan Rice free kick, either one, or the Marino goal, which I think was also quite spectacular. But to be different, I'll say when we beat City at home 5-1, because that beating of City, I felt, regardless of the fact that, City experienced a lot of injuries this season as well. Let's just say it. We had been on the wrong side of that pasting for a long time, and it felt really good to give it back to City in equal measure. And I think Miles Lewis-Skelly scoring the goal and then doing the Holland celebration as a way to give it back to him a little bit for all the stay humble that he did to us the previous that I guess it was that first game to Arteta, just was like the cherry on top. So for me, it just felt like we had exercised some demons that day against a side that had our number, and it felt good to do them like 5-1 in the way that we did it. We were by far the better team on the day, and the scoreline finally reflected it.
By far, so you mentioned the actual score. For me, the moment of the season was the celebration specifically because of all the media madness that happened. The arrival of Miles Lewis-Skelly to the big leagues, if you will. I absolutely loved it. And if you need a little bit of a cheeky one, if you will, another moment of the season is David Coote calling Klopp a cunt. I rather enjoy that one.
Yes.
To be completely honest with you.
About 5 minutes after that happened, Mike came up with the phrase "the Liverpool tax."
Yeah, the Coote tax. Yeah,
the Coote tax, where he envisioned that to make up for it, every rub of the green that would happen the rest of the year would go Liverpool's way,
and it did.
And it did, which because Mike is right about everything all the time, especially when it's bad for Arsenal. I was going to say,
if you'd be right about something that's good for Arsenal someday, Mike, that'd be great.
He's just right, and nothing else is ever good for Arsenal. So if he's just right, he's going to be right about all that stuff.
It's going to be crazy when Miles Skelly scores 10 goals next season.
Yeah, it would be crazy. Clip it. Thanks.
It would be clip it. Thank you.
That would be insane if that were to happen.
Yeah, no, those are solid moments of the season for sure. I think everybody was kind of carrying the Miles Lewis-Skelly one for sure. Of course, Abreu, of course, the Bernabeu, that's what I say, was I like the Bernabeu moment probably slightly more than, as unpopular as this might seem, probably a little bit more than the double goal Declan Rice at the Emirates. It was a great atmosphere, but I just like the fact that we beat Real Madrid. You don't often say you've played 4 games versus Real Madrid, you haven't lost. Not only that, you've gone to the Bernabeu and won. So pretty insane. I thought that was in Abreu, Martinelli scored the winner. I mean, what else do you want from there? Now you can't ask for a whole lot more. Moments that you would change in the season. Chris, feel free to start this one off.
Oh, damn. We talked about it already a little bit, but the January transfer window probably.
Ooh, okay.
I, I don't know that it would have made a difference in retrospect, but in the moment, I just couldn't envision us sitting on our hands and doing nothing given the injury crisis we had already had. And what I think we all suspected would happen the moment the window closed was that someone was going to get injured. And what happened? Kai Havertz tore his hamstring, the day after or 2 days after, whatever it was, after the window closed. And we all called it. We all said something's going to happen the minute the window closes. And what happened, it did. So, yeah, I think, again, in retrospect, I'm not sure it had changed our fortunes for the Premier League or the Champions League, but I think what it suggested to me in looking back at it and reflecting it is a much larger issue, which I talked about at the top of the pod, which is that I think when we are about to do something big, this ownership has shown us that they are not willing to do the extra work to put us over the finish line. And I think that lack of any movement in the January transfer window said it all to me in a way that I don't think I saw as clearly before then. And that's a big moment for me, unfortunately, as an Arsenal fan. It's shaken my confidence, my trust in this ownership, and my optimism for our ability to win the big things we all want to win in future seasons. So that's my moment that I'd like to change.
I thought you were going to go sporting, but you went with the transfer window. Well played, Chris.
I did.
About you, Kelly?
For a moment of the season, I think this is another negative one, but I think when Dembele shinned in that ball off the post in the Champions League semifinal.
Okay.
I think there was a lot of reasons for us to think, oh, shit, here we go again, like the Vice City meme. And that's what it was for me. It's like you kind of you're in that spot where you start dreaming, right? And then just absolute a nothing chance pullback with horseshit contact, and it just falls perfectly, and you just kind of go, okay, well, it's PSG's year. I guess they're going to do it now, and I think the sting, because I was still in that spot mentally where it's like the Premier League didn't go how we wanted to, but we are really playing well, and we kind of have the defensive setup with some attacking options that could do something here. And basically, what was that, like 5 minutes into the PSG tie?
Yeah.
Something stupid like that. They just fluff a horseshit goal. And then, like, again, Dembele is probably going to finish in the top 4 of the Ballon d'Or. He's at the best season he will ever have because he's constantly hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And him taking a hack at that and it just arrowing bizarrely, unnaturally off the post and in with the type of contact that he made was just, yeah, it's like, okay, this is going to be another season where we don't do any of the things that we want to do. And that was really, really, really hard. And there's nothing in that tie helped me recover from that notion at all.
So you and I are on different ends of that, because your wanting to change was at the beginning of the entire tie, and I was kind of throughout. I was thinking the Trossard, the Odegaard, the Martinelli, but the one that stuck out the most was I'm going to call it a tap in. It was by far harder than a tap in. It was the Saka one. It was like he would have scored that. He would have scored that cross,
missing the sitter.
Missing a sitter for his standard, right? We just spoke about him. We gave him a high grade and everything for the season. For his standards, It's one of those things that you expect him to score. And I was like, holy shit, dude! Had he scored that, they were pissing themselves. They were absolutely pissing themselves. And what would have been left, like 10, 15 minutes in that game?
Yeah, to get one.
I'm naive enough to think we would have pulled that off. And I think it was because it was such a massive miss that we kind of claimed ourselves out of nowhere to get in that position, and we had all the momentum going our way. I was like, this is it. This is it. And when he missed it, dude, that's when I was like, for fuck's sake, there's no recovering from that. I think even the players were like, that's
done.
Like, yeah, like I don't see how the players could potentially like be able to get to recuperate from that. But so I was on the other end. You were in the first 5 minutes, and I was in the last 10 minutes of that tie. But
You were still hanging in there, Mikey, and I was already done. It was done.
Yeah.
When I think our error margins too had shrunk so much that we could not, spiritually, tactically, or personnel wise, we could not absorb going down early. It was done.
Yeah.
And so especially in that type of way, to like, again, the only reason why that's not talked about as like a fluke is because it was Dembele hitting it, because that was a shit contact and it just happened to bounce in. And there was nothing good or adventurous or noteworthy about that chance except it went in the goal. And once that happened, we had a defensive midfielder playing striker, and as Chris alluded to in the window, we gave ourselves no other margin to do any important things besides that. So when that went in, it was done, and it was.
I'm naive enough to think that had we progressed somehow, some way, beating what we now know is probably the best team in Europe this year,
we would have won the championship.
I think we probably would have beat Inter in the final, and that's the thing that kills me the most, is that in the off chance maybe we would have gotten an Ollie Watkins, right? And we would have paid the 50 million or whatever it would have taken to get him across the line in January. He beds in for 4 months and he's ready for us, fit and firing in the Champions League. What happens to that two-legged tie that was, by all accounts, from an underlying metric perspective, one that we actually had the better chances overall in? Again, take Donnarumma's world-class. He had 3 world-class saves in that tie that could have meant, if he doesn't save those 3, we go through. But just take those off the table for a moment. You get an actual other lethal goal scorer up top, or somewhere on the pitch that converts some of those chances, and we go to the final. We could be talking about Arsenal as Champions League, champions right now. Instead, we decided to keep the powder dry for some unknown reason, and now we're, having to do a ton of work again in the summer. And who knows when we'll get that opportunity again to get to a Champions League semifinal. Those don't come around all that often. I mean, it was the 3rd time in our entire history that it's ever happened. And we just didn't do the necessary work to put us in the best position to get to a final that we could have won. So anyways.
Powder dried FC, concrete FC, monitoring FC.
So dry, so very dry.
So it's so dry. It's the driest it's ever been.
Very dry.
I know that, Chris, you shared, we want to talk about player of the season. I know that you and I both shared it was Gabriel. You could expand on that if you like. I kind of said my part as when I answered the question and gave him a grade. And then, of course, Kelly, you have the final say as far as player of the season go. I did save a few for the people that are no longer in chat. But it was still there. He believes that it's Declan Rice. Gunnar Works and BX Gunnar both give it to Gabriel themselves as well.
One last thing I'll say about Gabriel, and I'll let Kelly give his. He, by all accounts, is going to sign an extension. I think it's a really good sign that our best players are signing back up for 2 or more years of club football at Arsenal. I think that says a lot about their belief in where this is going. I think, Gabriel could probably get a contract that pays him even better than he's getting paid at Arsenal somewhere else. Saliba too, Saka as well, but all of them in re-upping with Arsenal suggests to me that they still believe that there are good things to win at Arsenal. So for me, that maybe if there's one hint of optimism, despite the fact that we have owners that don't share maybe or don't help us see that optimism, is that the players still believe. So that's a really good sign. Go Kelly. Who's your player of the season?
I'm gonna do my 2 cheats. I think we have to say Declan Rice, because I think he had the highest ceiling for the most extended period of time. Any player, I don't think there was a player that hit a higher level than Declan Rice did in the back half of the season. Mm-hmm. He is the positive outlier. He is the guy who played the best and was unplayable. Like, there's rarely a time in Arsenal history, because we just don't have, recent history, because we don't have the best players in the world anymore. This is not Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry, but for a while there, for a good, basically, I don't think anybody in our club has played better than Declan Rice played at the back end of the season since Alexis Sanchez's huge year, where that 18 months when he was like a top 3 to 5 player in the entire world. So I think that he was the best player of our season. I think from top to front to back, the most consistently very good player was Raya. I think he was one of the only star players that stayed consistently healthy all season. We forget, because of the proximity to the back end of the season, that he was electric in the first 3 to 4 months and saved a lot of points. It would have been even worse if he had not had an elite first half of the season. And I think that to the degree that he tailed off, which is we're playing pretty fast and loose with him tailing off. He still won the Golden Gloves and was still probably a top 3 goalkeeper in the league. He just wasn't as good as he was in the first half of the season. Was because he didn't have a real backup. He had teenagers and a guy who tried to save a ball like 45 yards out of the goal and 10 yards out of his area. So like he had to play all match, every single match, and he was very, very good. And I kind of resent the chase for his replacement when he was one of the best goalkeepers in the league. And that's it. And I think all the other stuff that comes out with him too, just like the interviews, he did a long form podcast with is it Ben Foster?
Yeah.
Who has a very good podcast too, where he does long form interviews. Just reinforces how I feel about him as a professional and a person. So I think those two, the highest ceiling was Rice, and I think probably Gabriel was the player of the season had he not gotten hurt for a big chunk of it. And if we're playing it just beginning to end, who was our best and most consistent player throughout the course of the year and contributed consistently, it was Raya.
Can't disagree.
Lovely.
And also Christian said too, Timber, also great shout for Timber too, who was quietly very, very good from top to bottom, end to end, in any role he put him in. So he needs a, yep, there we go too.
Shout out to Drago.
Yeah, Drago. Hey, Drago, we already did that for you, but nice to see you live, buddy.
That's how you know we're running late. We officially got Drago waking up.
Yeah,
in Eastern Europe, yeah.
Drago's getting up for work, and he's like, we're still on, so we're back to our mid-season form now.
Fair enough. All right, boys, that is the end of this wretched season. Unfortunately, it didn't end the way we all were hoping and expecting for it to be. We gave out some grades, talked about our disappointments and our optimisms and everything about the season, moments of the season, things that we would change, mostly PSG, and then, of course, the player of the season. We're going to wrap this up. It's very late for me. I'm an old man, but even later for Chris and Kelly. And
it's earlier where you are, and you're younger than both of us, Mike. Come on now.
I'm dying over here, dude. I'm absolutely dying. I'm not going to lie. So,
in fairness, though, Mike does get up at 2:30 in the morning every morning for some reason, doing a job we can't quite articulate.
Yeah.
But he does do a thing.
Sales with various people. Sales is what I do. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, this has been another Arsenal podcast. Chris at West Suburban AFC, Kelly at South Metro AFC. I have been Mike Hers AFC. You can find me on Twitter. So you can find the podcast on Twitter. You guys are doing the celebration of a United player. Come on, guys.
What's the Sesko? I need the Sesko. What's the Sesko? Oh, that's Gabrielle. Kelly. Nice work.
I know.
You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, and of course YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week, somewhere Tuesday or Wednesday, most likely.
Transfers.
We're going to talk about transfers and all the speculation and all the cements drying on all the conversations.
About all the things we're not going to do.
Yeah. That'd be swell.
Transfer list ready, boys. We'll
Can't
do
wait.
it.
This is Sesko's thing, jumping up in the air.
Later, guys. Injured, perfect Arsenal player. He went out injured.
Right foot this time, Martin Odegaard.
Zinchenko from Ketia, it's in, it's 4. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.